very vigilant here as this fire continues to burn uphill. We have seen a number of extremely effective water drops, both on the main fire there on the left and that spot fire on the right. Just a moment ago, we saw a really good water drop. However, I fear you could just tell in the last few seconds that spot fire has already doubled in size, despite the best efforts of that one helicopter. Again, we've got a total of at least 4 helicopters doing repeated water drops out here, but they need to continue that to get a handle on this. Right now, you see the spot fire has found itself some very dry, thick fuel, and that is the cause for the rate of spread here. It's also going to be driven by the terrain as it burns uphill being near the top of your screen, downhill going down in this shot right here.
Yeah, and I'm getting a little bit worried just because the end of Moraga Drive, which I think is a little deeper in the canyon, might not be visible. It might from where you are, even as high as you are right now. But from where it appears to be burning.
We can go ahead and show it.
Yeah, let's see.
What do we put it in perspective? Yeah, so right on the right side of your screen, that is going to be the end of Moraga Drive. These houses right here, Moraga Drive and I think Casiano Drive. Yeah, Casiano Road, excuse me. Moraga Drive on the top, Casiano Road down below. It looks like there's at least one fire truck in there, just to be on the safe side, most likely as a precaution. Same reason there is an evacuation warning and not an order. They are issuing this as a heads up. This is a heads up situation. It is an unpredictable and unstable situation right now, although by my eye, it is not immediately threatening. It is not immediately threatening, but of course that could change unless they continue those water drops. And look at that. In between water drops, right where they were just spilling water, you can see a big flare up right there near the top of this fire. So it ain't over yet, but this is a slow growing fire as opposed to the early stages when it spread rapidly uphill from the 405.
And there are some massive estates at the end of Moraga Drive. It's actually Moraga Estates. Several homes with large tennis courts, and in fact, there is a home at the very end, at the cul-de-sac, facing kind of perpendicular to some of the homes we can see right now, Chris. We're talking about we're talking about some of the largest homes in Los Angeles. And these flames are
some of the largest, most expensive homes in the world. You're right about that. Yeah, it really is. I mean, this is some of the most pristine and priceless real estate in the world, as well as the Pacific Palisades. This is the same caliber for folks who are now joining us from other parts of the country on our abc7.com stream. And of course, if you're watching us live, welcome, because this is a precarious fire in a precarious part of our beloved city, which has already been through so much in the last 2 weeks. This is very much the heart of the city right here, the Sepulveda Pass, which divides the San Fernando Valley and the LA Basin, now being lit up by a major brush fire that has spread rapidly uphill and is finding more dry fuel by the minute as it continues to creep uphill. These water drops are continuing. Again, we can expect them to continue throughout the night at this rate, but hopefully sooner rather than later, they will be able to start to make some progress here. It looks like it might be running up against a fire road. If you could look carefully near the top there, Jory, there's like a straight line there. That is Sepulveda Fire Road that it is now encountering. Very interesting, as it approaches that ridge line, we're going to keep a really close eye to see if any of those embers cross the fire road. That would be a really bad thing. However, once it gets to the other side of the fire road, it has to go downhill. Fire likes to go uphill, not downhill. But if the other side of Sepulveda Fire Road does catch on fire, it is still a precarious situation, especially with the breeze blowing these embers and creating new spot fires. That fire, if it jumps Sepulveda Fire Road, is going to be much more concerning for those folks at the end of Moraga Drive.
Yeah, I was curious to see this view, the daytime view. So there's Sepulveda Fire Road at the top of that ridge. If we can pop it up one more time, you can see the end of Moraga Drive there. It is not far. It's right down the hill from where we're talking about. It is a steep, it looks like a steep decline there from the top of the ridge. But as Chris was saying, this fire would have to kind of climb downhill and slightly against the wind. Now, Moraga Drive sounded a little familiar to me, so I went back in my old scripts. There was a fire that burned here in December of 2017, And Moraga Drive was affected by this. I remember it was a gated community. Trying to get in there was difficult for the ingress for some firefighters in terms of navigating the gate to this community. They seem to have made it in there tonight. That is a large hook and ladder that's already made it onto Moraga. Linda Flora would be the next one over at the top of the ridge. That is a little worrisome, the fact that you have this community up at the top of that ridge. Thankfully, the winds don't seem to be blowing too hard right now, but that could change. I want to bring back in Dallas Rains because we're talking about pretty low-level winds right now, Dallas, but
that's right.
That is not going to be the case all night long.
It is not. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, my analysis shows that we'll start getting a little bit more north and northeast winds, up to 15 to 20 miles per hour through there. And that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Humidities are not going to recover. We're looking at humidities right now in the LA basin running about 5 to 10%. So as the sun comes up tomorrow morning, the winds will increase more and we'll see those humidities stay really, really low. So that's going to be difficult. And another thing too, tomorrow is the hottest day of this entire event. Tomorrow we'll see temperatures in that area in the low 80s. Today, John Wayne Airport hit 86 degrees.
Wow.
So we're talking about really warm. Now, it's not a strong wind event, but as you can see, with as many fires that are being lit around Southern California right now, it's just, wow, it just happens so quickly. And we have to, all the firefighters doing a great job of protecting, but we're really stretched out now.
Yeah.
And I think you'll probably see more fires started tomorrow. And then hopefully that will be it because we'll see a huge change in the weather pattern for the weekend, which will allow rain to come in, higher humidities, moisture will actually help with these fires too.
We just have to get there first.
We still have to go through all day tomorrow and tonight, all day tomorrow, into tomorrow night, and then early Friday morning. We'll see a switch to the sea breeze, which will start Friday afternoon.
And that will bring some of that the moisture back in. But let me have you put your professor hat because you're so good at this.
Thank you.
5 to 10% humidity right now.
Yes.
This isn't Death Valley. It doesn't get much lower than what we're talking about right now.
That's right. It doesn't. But what we have in Southern California, these winds, like the Santana winds, are winds that are compressional winds. And in the wintertime, it is not uncommon to get really super low humidities. They have the same type of wind called the Chinook, which comes off the Rocky Mountains into Colorado, really dry. And the Chinook, the word means snow eater. And you could see these winds, compressional winds, come out of Colorado and can eat 2 or 3 inches of snow in a couple of hours. We have the same deal here in Southern California, same type of what we call an adiabatic wind. And that is going to continue through tomorrow. Not powerful, but anytime you have so much vegetation
it doesn't take much.
And so many opportunities to start fires, it's frightening.
Well, I know a lot of my viewers, I'm sure, share my affliction. Every time we get these, my hands begin to crack and sometimes bleed. It's so dry.
Really dry.
And there's really nothing you can do about it other than,
Yeah. And we talked about also how much rain we have had in the past 2 years. So you have a lot of brush.
Yeah.
And that's what we're dealing with.
And here we go, yet another, there we go. We can see a water source here. Once we get Chris Christie back on the line, we can see exactly where we are looking. Chris, where are they? You got us. Where are they filling up here?
Yeah, this is going to be the heart of Bel Air at Stone Canyon, in Stone Canyon Reservoir. They are now dipping into that reservoir for additional water. There are additional aircraft now fighting what is a 10-acre fire. This is a 10-acre fire called the Sepulveda Fire. 5 aircraft in total as of this moment, continuing with these precision water drops. There's an additional aircraft, Jory, in the air right now, and that is a CHP ship. I believe it's a fixed wing that is circling this area, and we are being told that that fixed wing is looking for a possible arson suspect. They are searching. They are scouring the area. We know that's what they are searching for. We do not know what prompted that search, if there was an actual report or more information that they are going on, but there is a CHP aircraft up here looking for any sign of that arson suspect. As you can see, the water drops are continuing right now. There are now fire trucks at the top of this ridgeline on Sepulveda Fire Road, and they are going to work at all cost to prevent this fire from jumping over Sepulveda Fire Road right there in the top left-hand corner of your screen. There's the top of the road, a major flare-up approaching Sepulveda Fire Road, and a fire truck now in the vicinity to hopefully prevent these embers from spreading. But I got to tell you, there is a little wind, and we know it's not going to stay as calm as it is now, but these embers are flying. They are encountering some really thick brush, and you'll occasionally see big poofs of embers continuing to fly through the Sepulveda Pass.
And that's the 405 is now shut down. The 405 southbound. We see traffic going north.
They have just shut down.
Yeah.
That's the southbound side. They have shut down the southbound side. One would imagine they are probably, in all likelihood, about to shut down the northbound side if they haven't already. I'm trying to take a peek down there. I do see some emergency vehicles. It looks like for now there is car traffic getting by. You can see it right there. At least 3 or 4 lanes getting by here. But I've got to imagine if they were motivated to shut down the southbound side, most likely the northbound side would be next.
I'm fine with that logic. It makes sense to me, Chris, but we'll see what they wind up doing. I remember hearing Sheriff Luna talk about the Hughes fire, and the impetus for shutting down the 5 freeway was to allow free flow of emergency personnel. But watching that video of the southbound 405 here, it looks like you're hampering the path of emergency vehicles because they are now stuck in the same traffic that everybody else is when you shut the 405 down. We saw them moving very slowly on the shoulder trying to get through there. And so we'll see, you see it coming almost to a stop when you have to imagine if traffic were flowing freely, they would get there as fast as everybody else moving on the freeway. If it's a safety issue, that's another story. But then you have to question, why is the northbound side, which is closer to the fire, and with more people stopping on it to take photographs, why that would be allowed to flow and the southbound side is still open, is closed down. So something we'll keep an eye on here. Looking down, looks like Sepulveda to see where they are going, if they're going to wind up shutting down the 405 northbound side of this. But a lot of emergency personnel moving through there. And again, I'm reminded when we see the Sepulveda Fire Road and how effective that is to allow that personnel to get to the top of that ridge. Why they name it that, it is very clear. To have access in situations exactly like we are seeing tonight, where you have a fire and no homes, there's no infrastructure in there, there's no access other than these dirt fire roads that they're able to drive on to get to exactly this point to stop the progress of the fire. Another way to do that, of course, those airdrops, which we saw just a perfect drop. You could not be more accurate than what we just saw right there, taking what had been a rather large plume of a hot spot and reducing it to nothing. Now again, as we said, the fire tries to regroup once the drop has been completed, but that is why it's so important to have multiple aircraft. And we have 5 of them now circling from the reservoir back here to the fire, and that Stone Canyon Reservoir is not far. It is just about a half a mile, if that, away from where this firefight is taking place. Very quick, 3 ridges over, and there is Stone Canyon. And so they do not have to fly far to reload that water and bring it back here to the fire, and we should see another drop here momentarily. Chris Christie is overhead in Air 7 with the best view of this firefight.
Yeah, Jory, that was a great drop. That last drop right there along Sepulveda Fire Road was, that's going to pay dividends in trying to halt the forward progress of this fire. And now you've got personnel up there to really defend that ridgeline. So that's great. That was a great drop right there. Even that spot fire that we saw earlier is slowing down. It's kind of merged with the main body of flames. I think it's fair to say if this was 10 acres, it's probably growing a little bit more, but very gradually as it continues to creep through the Sepulveda Pass here, it is running out of real estate once it gets to the top of Sepulveda Road. You can see there's a total of 5 LA City fire helicopters fighting this fire. They are using Stone Canyon Reservoir and Encino Reservoir. I believe they're using both of them to continue these water drops, very effective water drops at that. There is also a large caravan of fire trucks making their way up Moraga Drive, which is the closest community to this fire, and they are ready to engage in structure protection at all costs. They will defend this property, life and then property, as they make their way through here. You can see a ton of fire trucks and apparatus making their way up Moraga Drive, where there is now a voluntary evacuation warning. An evacuation warning now in place for Moraga Drive, as well as Cassiano Road and points west to the 405. So from the 405 essentially to Moraga is what is now under an evacuation warning. Another great drop there. And the top of this fire right there is looking much, much better just in the last few minutes, Jory.
Yeah, just looking at some history of this area. 2017 was the Skirball fire, about 500 acres. It burned 4 homes on Moraga Drive, burned them to the ground. 11 other homes there suffered damage. Rupert Murdoch, I believe, might have lost a home. A $30 million vineyard estate in that area on Moraga Drive might have been lost. I have to check my notes from 2017, but that was a pretty major fire in Bel Air. 500 acres in a partially urban area, suburban urban area of Bel Air with multi-million-dollar homes. And so this stretch of road there, you see right behind that hill, the road kind of continues up to the left behind that crest, but there are tennis courts on several of these estates. There you see 1, 2, 3, 4 tennis courts just on the last 6 homes here on this drive. We're talking about estates. It looks like a vineyard going up that hillside. You can see the terracing on the hill. These are very large and expensive homes and estates there at the very end of Moraga Drive. So again, we're talking about 7 or 8 years ago. It was December 2017, so really 7 years ago. This exact same area was faced with a very similar situation. The Skirball fire, December 7th, or December 6th or December 7th, burned this exact area. And Cassiano Drive, on the west side of Cassiano, that's the next road down to the south and to the west of Moraga, that also suffered damage back in 2017 as well. I'm sure there's Cassiano right there, closer to the 405. And so this was a pretty devastating fire at the time. Our scales have kind of changed a bit after going through these last 2 fires, Eaton and Palisades. But you lose 4 homes and see damage to 11 others on a scale of that size. That was a major fire 7 years ago. And here we are seeing another one threaten these large homes and estates tonight as it's burning one ridge over from Moraga yet again. But now the five helicopters are cycling through from Stone Canyon Reservoir, picking up hundreds of gallons of water and dropping them on this fire one after another. LA County 22, the Firehawk, has now joined this firefight. That is the 5th aircraft now fighting this fire. But you can still see, even with all that water being dropped on this fire, we see open flames. And you can see now, as Chris Christie and Air 7 has spun around to the east side of this fire, you can see that smoke is now blowing from right to left, north to south. Are we getting a look at another? Yep, I see the water down there. So this is Stone Canyon Reservoir. You can see the helicopter.
Stone Canyon Reservoir,
down. Yep. How many, can you see all 5 cycling through, Chris?
Yeah, we have. We've seen all 5 cycling through pretty steadily, very effective drops. This angle is a really unique angle, actually. As you mentioned, we're now on the east side of this fire, looking down into the pass with now the 405 near the top of your screen. So kind of a little bit of a reverse of what we were looking at earlier. But as you can see from this angle, you can see all of those flames that, if you're on the other side, are obscured by the smoke. So a really interesting and kind of a unique perspective from this angle right here. But as ominous as these pictures may look, I will say that in general, the overall profile of this fire appears to be much more encouraging, and so has the firefight. We have seen those drops one after another, and the size of these flames are much smaller thanks to those many water drops, and it's looking much better, although we are not out of the woods yet. As you mentioned, Jory, just looking down from this angle, you can see just how tall they can get, and still seeing lots of embers float through here. But again, they have seemed to keep the fire from spreading over Sepulveda Fire Road, and that really is the best news for those folks on Moraga Drive. Here comes another chopper with another drop here in just a second. He's going to get down low and again drop right near the perimeter of this fire. Yep, looks like some big flames right along there near the base, and that will do it for that body. And they just have to keep repeating that over and over again, because it is sometimes, like we often say, like a game of whack-a-mole, where one fire is put to bed and another hotspot flares up. So it's going to be an all-night process. They will be here and continue these drops all well into the morning, guarantee you that. But right now, they have to be pretty encouraged with what they're seeing in general.
Yeah, and this was one of the highlights of this firefight 2 weeks ago. Was people? It became a thing online of people watching these fire drops, these precision drops, and watching these big bursts of flames be reduced to just embers on the ground. It is so incredible to watch. And here we go again, another one making a low pass and a spin as they go, dropping those hundreds of gallons and just knocking that fire. It is incredible to watch every time we see it. And honestly, when you think about it, go ahead.
I was going to say, it really is a bit mesmerizing, and also you have to imagine they're taking they're factoring in, I should say, taking into account the wind. They can't fly and drop straight down on those hotspots. They have to offset a little bit and take the wind speeds into account, much like a sharpshooter or a marksman would line up and take the wind into account when he's firing a long rifle. Same thing for these guys when the wind is blowing, especially through these canyons. It's really a mesmerizing sight to see, and really one of the joys and privileges of this job up here. It is like watching a virtual air show down below taking place over these brilliant fires that light up the night sky. These air operations are even more incredible, if you can imagine, than the day operations, which are equally incredible because of all those air tankers that can drop all that retardant over and draw lines around the fire and do all kinds of incredible, miraculous work. These guys take on a little bit of a different task in the overnight hours when they put on their night vision and just concentrate on tackling these new fires that pop up, that without that night vision would not be fightable fires. We would be, Moraga Drive would be under a mandatory evacuation, not a voluntary, if it wasn't for those night vision equipped pilots and those helicopters that are able to get to these fires and make quick work of them so fast as they jump into action. And again, LA City Fire really getting all the credit on this one. They have all of their resources dedicated to this fire. Again, at least 5 choppers that we are aware of, a number of hand lines already established near the base of this fire, right along Sepulveda Drive, or Sepulveda Boulevard, I should say, just off of the 405 freeway. They are tackling this fire from a number of different angles.
Yeah, Sepulveda Fire Road at the top. We have crossed midnight, so it is now Thursday morning. I know a lot of you expected to see Jimmy Kimmel Live airing at this time, but we have continued to stay in coverage. This is now the Sepulveda fire burning just off the 405 freeway in Bel Air as we were watching 5 helicopters cycle through, and it looked like that helicopter might have flown through an ember field to make that drop. The precision and the skill that these pilots are showing, and as Chris said, they have to adjust for the wind, but with our resident quarterback, our ABC7 resident quarterback, Dallas Rain, standing right here, you don't throw the ball to where you see the receiver, you throw the ball to where the receiver is going to be. And so these pilots are dropping the water not exactly where they see, not where they're over, but where that water is going to travel, especially given the wind, Dallas.
That is true, Jory. And also what you have to factor in here that a lot of people don't know is that over the top of these heavy fires like this, there are strong thermals. So these are warm updrafts that are blowing the helicopter vertically, not just horizontally.
Yeah.
But thank goodness tonight the winds are not strong. But as we mentioned before, we're going to see the winds increase starting about 4 o'clock in the morning, and they will last through about 9 o'clock through this area. My forecast for this area is 15 to 20, 25, maybe gusts to 30, with humidities running about 9 or 10%. So that's what the firefighters will be facing as we get into the early morning hours into the day tomorrow. And remember, the red flag warnings all day tomorrow, as temperatures will go into the 80s. We saw 80s today right at the ocean. Offshore winds, we're going to get that again tomorrow. Red flags will stay with us. So any fire that started is going to be tough to handle.
80 degrees is warm. If you're wearing full fire gear, working in the heat of a fire all day long, it is downright hot and uncomfortable.
Right, exactly. And it's frightening to see. I guess it looks like this fire was started right down there off the 405.
Yeah.
No lightning, of course.
Dallas,
so human
hear me?
cause. Yes, I can. Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just in the last couple of minutes, it almost looks like the wind has really shifted. You know, there was not a heavy wind when we first pulled up here, but if you widen out a little bit, Rob, take a look now as this really big flare up near the top there, right by Sepulveda Fire Road, makes a run for it. Look at the direction of the smoke, just the smoke alone. Widen out a little bit more, and watch how this smoke plume is now shooting, instead of straight up in the air like it was earlier, is now extending all the way down the 405 freeway. The smoke plume is now drifting directly towards Wilshire.
Yes, exactly. And another thing too, Chris, as you know from flying around these, the weather that's created around these, when you see these fire nados, these vorticities, well, that hot air rises and air has to come in to fill that vacuum. So you can have winds coming from all compass directions, and it can happen within just a minute or two. So that's what we're dealing with this one. It's a hot fire. And as we mentioned before, a lot of vertical lifting of the air right through there. So you're getting strong winds going. Look right there. You can see that fire NATO right there. So again, but the environmental winds will be increasing as we head toward the morning hours.
Incredible. And I believe we have, this is the flight map. You can see, as our director Mike Gilbert put it, the air show going on right now over this fire. That is seven aircraft circling around. There's the Stone Canyon Reservoir to the top right, where that orange helicopter appears to be filling up. And then you have several other assets either on their way to or from to fill up or fight this fire. Do we have Michelle on the ground? Okay, we are awaiting the arrival of Michelle Fisher, who has been on the front lines of the Hughes fire in Castaic, racing down the 405 right now to bring you the latest on the ground, because the firefight continues both on the ground and in the air. On the right side of your screen, you're looking at a live picture from Air 7 of the Sepulveda fire. At the top of that screen, there is a emergency vehicle, a fire truck at the top of Sepulveda Fire Road. That is the top of a ridge, and that ridge is all that is separating this fire from Moraga Drive, home to some of the most expensive homes and estates in Los Angeles. It appears that it has not yet jumped Sepulveda Fire Road, and that is good news. The road itself can be used as a bit of a fire break. It's also going against the wind. And so here you see it's burning right up to the edge of that dirt road, that fire road. It can serve as its own fire break. The danger, you can see the embers being kicked off at the top of this hillside. If they were to be able to travel to the east and jump the fire road, that could then spell the forward progress, the march down the backside of that hill. And when you get to the bottom of that hillside, that is Moraga Drive and some of those very large and expensive homes. And so yet again, another precision airdrop on this fire, one after another. And you can see on the left side of your screen the wind pattern blowing due south, right through the pass, right down the 405, and blowing that fire straight to Casiano. You can see Beverly Glen Boulevard to the right there, but much closer to the 405, there are two pockets of homes. It's Casiano and it's Moraga. And originally, it's funny, we were talking about the community up to the north, Bel Air Crest. That seems to be completely in the clear now because the winds are continuing to blow to the south, and that is very bad news if it continues that direction for the two communities down there. Again, Casiano and Moraga. And as Air 7 is getting a different perspective, Chris, how's it looking? You're now on the east. How's it looking from there?
Yeah, just in the last few minutes, they've had a few really effective water drops in succession that have really halted the progress, the forward progress of the fire as it raced up towards Sepulveda Fire Road. Both the fire break and those water drops have really slowed this thing down. There was a lot less fire than there was a few minutes ago, but you can still see a decent amount as it continues to kind of creep towards the south. So it's not only going uphill, but as the winds shift and start blowing the smoke and fire towards the south, we are seeing the surface area of this burn scar continuing to grow. So what was a 10-acre fire a little while ago, probably closer to 15, maybe even 20 acres by now. Would not be surprised if it's reached that range. Probably between 15 and 20 acres as we look at it now. But still, the rate of spread is manageable. It's manageable for these fire crews. It's proven to be manageable as they've been able to really halt the forward progress on the top end. Now they're going to have to really focus on the south side as this fire blows this fire a little bit further south, but not much. And in the grand scheme of things, not much closer to Morago Drive, which is the landmark that we're using right now. The closest neighborhood to this fire would be Morago Drive, but really Morago, I would say, is good, maybe at least a half mile to 3/4 of a mile away. Not in immediate danger, but nonetheless, they have issued that voluntary evacuation warning, Jory.
Yeah, it's good news that it's staying away. I know traffic has been a nightmare on the 405. The southbound side was closed at one point. I don't know, as you back out here, I want to see if it's opened back up. The north side, the northbound side.
Still open. They have kept it open. Southbound is also getting by.
Yeah,
so
I
that
see some
southbound
cars.
closure was an intermittent closure.
Okay.
And now, essentially, both sides are back open.
Okay, that is good news. Michelle Fisher is fresh off the Hughes firefight coverage, racing south to join coverage of the Sepulveda fire. Michelle, where are you and what can you tell us?
Yeah, it's never ending this time of year. So we were making our way here. We're on Sepulveda. The southbound of Sepulveda also closed right now, as was the southbound of the 405. So what we're seeing here is people being turned around as they try to make their way to wherever they're going tonight. Some people actually, this individual here in this car being turned around. And also we're seeing somebody that's gotten out of their car to kind of wait and see what's happening. What we can also see from this vantage point is the fire is burning on the other side up this hill here, but we can, from where we're standing, where we've gotten out of our news van, we can hear those helicopters and we can actually see the water drops that are being made. And from the vantage point that we're giving people from Air 7, it looks like those water drops are really making a huge difference. In the background here, you can actually hear one of the police cruisers that's here at the end of this road on the loudspeaker telling cars as they make their way down. Southbound is closed through traffic, so you do have to turn around, because as we did make our way here, we saw a number of fire engines. There were actually 2 or 3 in front of us, fire engines racing down to this area as they try to get a control of this fire right now. We do know, based off of what Chris has been telling us from Air 7, 4 copters right now doing these water drops to try to get control of this fire that is burning uphill, and this quickly moving because of the dry brush out here. The wind right now, I can tell you, not very strong at all, not blowing, but again, it's not only the winds that are an issue, it is that dry vegetation, it's the low humidity that we've seen not only here now, but also that we saw with the Hughes fire where we were in Castaic. So it is just these conditions that we're seeing all across Southern California. And as we've also mentioned and do want to point out, reports now that they are possibly looking for a suspect, an arson suspect that maybe is involved and who possibly started this fire that has now led to this firefight now that's impacting this side of town. So that's the latest live where we are. We're along Sepulveda Boulevard. I'll go ahead and send it back to you in the studio now, Jory.
Okay, Michelle, thank you, and great job racing down there so fast to be able to join us in coverage here. I do want to get to an evacuation warning that has been issued. This is for residents on both sides of the 405 freeway now. This is residents south of 1500 block of Casiano Road. That 1500 Casiano Road is the end, the dead end of Casiano Road. So basically everyone on Casiano Road South, you have an evacuation warning. North of Moraga Drive East, that is that branch of Moraga Drive that we have been looking at that burned 7 years ago. That is under evacuation warning. And on the other side of the freeway, west of Shallon Road, it's a curious call here. That might have been a little earlier in this firefight, but the fact that they would issue any kind of warning on the west side of the 405 is very interesting at this point. Are we looking at Moraga? Chris Christie overhead? Yeah, that is
that's
Moraga.
Moraga right there on the right side. Yep, Moraga on the right there, Casiano all the way to the right. So Moraga up top, Casiano just below it, and then you've got the Sepulveda Boulevard right below that. So yeah, the evacuation warning obviously is out of an abundance of caution. And certainly in this environment that we are living in, nobody is taking any chances. And so they have been very quick and proactive with, casting wide nets for these evacuation warnings, and they've done so with good reason and good calculation, because if they think that there is potential for a rapidly spreading fire, they will not take any chances. But as you can see in this shot right here, I think it's fair to say, relatively obvious, that this fire is now smoldering at best. There is some active flame obviously right there in the middle. That is going to be the south edge of this fire. They are continuing the drops. Within the next couple minutes, you'll see drops on all 3 or 4 of those hot spots. And this fire is, again, starting to take on a much more encouraging profile. You see all of those little kindling spots throughout the hill, but the large bodies of flame have appeared to be halted right there at the Sepulveda Fire Road. Near the top of your screen, that one fire, at least maybe battalion chief or somebody near the top, kind of just making sure none of those embers cross over, get any closer to Moraga Drive, or cross over to the other side of the fire road. And right now, it does appear that because of those water drops, those repeated precision water drops that have, they really jumped into action for this one. They were, within minutes, they had 5 or 6 helicopters fighting this fire, and this is the result right here. It really is remarkable when you think about it, and it's not over yet, but it's definitely looking a lot better for this.
It looks great. It looks great. Chris Christie in Air 7 was able to watch this fire develop on his trip down from Castaic, where all day we have been covering the Hughes fire, only to then be alerted of a second fire burning tonight, and that was done through Air 7. Michelle Fisher raced down from Castaic. We just heard from her on the traffic on Sepulveda, and Tim Caputo also raced down. He's been covering the Hughes fire all day as well. Our job is never done, Tim, and we can see that fire right over your shoulder. It's like deja vu all over again. This is very similar to what we saw a few hours ago up in Castaic.
Different fires, same view essentially. It's kind of interesting too, because down as you get into Sepulveda here, where we are actually down the street a little bit from where Michelle Fisher was, you could see the smoke and you could see the fire, but you could also tell that the wind is not terribly strong at the moment, which is obviously great news, as this fire not really spreading at a rapid pace, certainly not at the pace we saw the Hughes fire earlier this afternoon, which blew up to 10,000 acres fairly quickly. Here's what's interesting this time of night especially, because as the fire especially starts to go down a little bit, yes, you see those bits of orange flame in there, but if you look in there too, like little ants in there, you see the flashlights of the firefighters on the ground. Keep in mind here, and obviously if you come through Sepulveda Pass up and down the 405 during this stretch, you know it's steep terrain on either side. We're right at the point where Sepulveda goes from the kind of southbound lanes of the 405 and switches over and rides along the 405 on the northbound lanes, but to climb up the side of that to get to where those flames are is no easy task, and these firefighters have made it their mission to get this one under control quickly. You guys mentioned it, this was up pretty quickly and they have made quick work of it, obviously with the help of the helicopters from above as well. The big concern, obviously, the areas of Bel Air and the houses just to the east of here. But if you see where we're looking now, especially from the ground, it is a lot of smoldering ground, which is great. When you consider the Hughes fire earlier today of how those big flames were really flaring up, this is what we saw after hours and hours of fighting that fire. This could be very well a case where they got to it so quickly they really got it under control. Got the top left side there a little bit too. You do see these flames kind of flaring up in these individual spots, but it's not necessarily spreading quickly. It's obviously got some fuel to burn in those individual spots, but we're not seeing it like fly in one direction or another. You do see the smoke coming off it at a relatively kind of slow pace. So that's an indication that the winds are not terribly strong at the moment. There is a slight breeze down here. But Jory, that's the good thing about when the breeze dies down a little bit. It makes it a little bit easy for these firefighters to kind of get a handle on these individual spots as they're putting out. Obviously where we are right now, if you come back down to the street level here, Mike, you'll see the fire crews have set up here a whole load of them already. Remember, this is the week we were kind of preparing for when it came to that big red flag warning for the entire week. So all these crews, most of these crews at this point are standing by, but this is kind of the manpower that you see, not just at the Hughes fire, but obviously this one as well, of not just the crews on the front lines, but the backup crews and the backup crews to the backup crews to make sure if this thing does spread in any single direction or any farther from where it is at the moment, there are people here to make sure those flames get some water on them. Obviously the work still left to be done here, but all considering, they've made pretty quick work of this. Obviously not much containment, if any, but it seems by the response, by the work they've put in, that they've got a decent handle at this point, Jory. And Michelle mentioned it earlier too. I heard from a police officer a little bit earlier about a possible arson investigation already happening. Doesn't mean that this was automatically, definitely intentionally set, but anytime there's an arson investigation, obviously the question goes into your mind for police whether or not this was started intentionally. That's the later step. At the moment, obviously the concern is getting more and more water on these flames to try to put them out, Jory.
Yeah, not necessarily arson, but certainly set somehow. There's not enough wind to knock down any power lines, nor are there potentially any in the area. And we're not talking about lightning in a situation like this. So then the only feasible explanation would be man-made. It doesn't necessarily, again, mean it's necessarily arson, but given its nature, the time of day, and the weather conditions, and the fact that authorities are now looking for a potential suspect, it does appear to be man-made, but again, very early, we do not know. I can't help but think about, as we watch this firefight, thank you, Tim, the water drops one after the other. I can't help but think about 2 weeks ago, that Tuesday night when we had two major fires break out, and what it would have meant to those firefights had we had air assets able to fly those nights. The winds were so strong, we could not see scenes that we are looking at right now. And you can see just how effective it is every time a helicopter drops its water onto this fire, what it does. And when you take that away from a firefight, and that's what happened with the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire, and you look at what those hand crews were doing on the ground, even in this fire, it is effective and it helps. But how little it does on the grand scale, how little a hand crew on the ground can do to fight this fire compared to what these aircraft can do. It is just so important that we have these air assets, and how detrimental it was that they had to be grounded due to the high winds, the danger to fly that night, and how we got to the situation that we did. Let's go back to Michelle Fisher's camera, because I believe she has as we watch
I'm
this
on the
one
south
last
side.
drop. Okay, yeah, Michelle, where are you?
I think it's back open. I mean, cars are traveling down the road.
Okay, let's head back to Michelle Fisher. It seems things are opening back up.
I'm on the southbound side of the 405, yeah. Yeah, from where we are, we're here on the southbound side of the 405, not far from where Tim Caputo just spoke with you all. We've made our way now down here, and the freeway seems to be back open on both sides. The northbound never was shut down, but the southbound side does seem to be moving freely. But what is happening that we can tell you and show you is that this fire that you see burning here behind me, we got a better vantage point for you now. This fire has a lot of people stopping and getting out of their vehicles to take video. I would say along this stretch right now where we are, there are about 15 or 20 cars with people pulled over. They have their cell phones out. They're out of their cars, some of them, just kind of looking at what's going on, looking at the flames that are burning in the hillsides, and also looking at the helicopters overhead that are doing these water drops. So this scene is really something that's captivating a lot of people. I know it's not the first time that a fire's burned in this area, and so this is something that people in the area have seen before, but certainly it does catch your attention as you're making your way down the freeway or up the freeway, whichever way you're traveling, and you see this hillside burning here along the 405. You can see that the majority of this hillside is smoldering, but even in the past 2 or 3 minutes that we've been doing this live report, there has been a portion that's kind of sparked up with some more flames right now. But again, firefighters doing a tremendous job, at least 4 helicopters right now doing those overhead water drops, which has really done a phenomenal job since we've gotten here in the past 30 minutes, just making sure this fire, which I believe we mentioned might be about 10 acres, is now under control and to a good point. And Tim, you heard him mention just the manpower and the resources that are in this area. This, of course, isn't far from the Palisades fire that broke out 2 weeks ago. So some of those resources still kind of positioned in that area, and we have seen just the sheer magnitude of the amount of fire engines that are here, first responders, police officers, everyone that is not only trying to get a hold of the fire here along this hillside burning along the 405 in the Sepulveda Pass, but also just to make sure traffic is under control and to keep people in order and where they need to go. But again, we can report right now we're on the side of the 405 and you can see the traffic behind me southbound is again reopened and moving smoothly right now. So that's the latest live here. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Okay, Michelle, thank you. It is giving us a very interesting look to see the same fire from the ground and the air, and things are looking so much better than they were just about an hour ago when we first began covering this fire. Let's head back to Chris Christie one more time. You were the first to spot this and report on the fire, and there were some really scary moments in those first few minutes of this fire, Chris.
Jory, since then we have seen an aggressive aerial attack on this fire. We saw it grow very rapidly and we have seen it defeated very rapidly thanks to those precision water drops, upwards of about a half a dozen aircraft fighting this fire, and at times simultaneous drops, even just a couple of moments ago, 2 drops at the same time on either side of the fire, and then just after that we saw the CH-47 Chinook helicopter dump about 3,000 gallons of water on that flank of the fire right there, really making tremendous progress. Now that major hotspot right there is about the only cause for concern, I would say, and in just a couple of minutes, this fire will be just about wrapped up, but they will be here throughout the night, both handline crews and aircraft, making sure this fire does not flare up again in the overnight hours. It will be an all-night process, but things are looking much, much better here at the Sepulveda fire in the Sepulveda Pass.
Yeah, Chris Christie, great work all day long covering your second fire of the day. There goes the Chinook with another large water drop. The only real portion we're seeing of open flame now is on the southern flank, and that is not entirely surprising given that the winds are blowing north to south through the Sepulveda Pass, and that is really the only spot. We see one dot there towards the top of the ridge where that vehicle is parked and watching that Sepulveda fire road. But not surprising that the bulk of the flames we are seeing now are on the south side, but these helicopters have done such a great job of getting on this. This is about an hour now we've been on this fire, and conditions have improved and changed throughout the firefight. We have seen the cycle of helicopters continue their march, going from Stone Canyon Reservoir to pick up water and bringing it right back within minutes to be able to drop it one after another. And we're seeing this in real time, this parade of helicopters be able to drop this water on this fire and stop its progress. And once again, another precision drop kind of killing these flames. As we've talked about, the fire regroups a little bit, but once again, that's why it's so great to have this parade of helicopters be able to make its way through. So with things looking better, we are going to return you to your regular programming. Jimmy Kimmel Live would normally be wrapping up about right now. We are going to take you to Jimmy Kimmel Live in its entirety, starting at the beginning. However, we will continue to monitor the Sepulveda fire burning just off the 405 freeway, and we will not hesitate to break back in should conditions warrant that to happen. So in the meantime, these firefighters will continue their progress of fighting this fire, making sure that they can get it under control before the winds pick back up. But for now, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our team of reporters and staff who have been covering this fire. We now return you to our regular programming.